Hello, civilized people. Before I get into it, let me tell you what the followers of Nick Fuentes want from you. They want honesty. Now, what you've seen, the clips of Fuentes saying horrible things, probably makes you wonder what the hell I'm talking about. I hope you'll stick around and then let me know if I landed the plane. The followers of Fuentes, the Groypers, grew up in this mess that we've made of our society. Look at the future we built for them. No wonder they're seeking a different path. Of course, I think they're misinformed on some fundamental issues, and terribly so, but I also agree with Fuentes on some other fairly important things. I've watched enough of Fuentes to get some of his shtick. I can see how a Groyper could be a fan of Fuentes and at the same time believe that he's not a racist. I don't agree, but I recognize the excuses Fuentes leaves around for them to grab hold of. If you've seen clips of Fuentes praising Hitler and Stalin, then you probably think I've lost my mind. Nah, but I do understand how he gained followers in this moment of constant, unabashed, utter bunk and cultural destruction. Nick Fuentes has riled Republicans such that their intellectual class, if we can pretend one exists in any sane form, advises that the right-wing case against Fuentes should focus on actions and outcomes rather than trying to debunk their horrible statements. In this piece by the conservative Christopher F. Rufo in City Journal, the author admonishes both left and right against taking Fuentes at his word. Quote, both sides fail to understand the Nick Fuentes phenomenon. They take his statements seriously and engage with them in good faith. But Fuentes' stated beliefs, while abhorrent, are not best parried by taking them at face value. Instead, the right should consider him an actor in what postmodern theorist Jean Baudrillard called hyperreality, a system in which the simulation of reality comes to replace reality itself. Rufo goes on. And stick with me, this sounds boring, but this is the heart of it. Under conditions of hyperreality, symbols of past phenomena lose their original meaning. Emptied out, they then circulate through digital media, where they drive the discourse and, while purely derivative, still spark real emotional involvement. In this way, the hyperreal becomes more real than real, masking the true nature of reality. Let's take that idea from a French philosopher filtered through American right-wing word salad to mean Fuentes says terrible shit he may not believe to get a reaction for saying terrible shit, thereby further denuding the words of their meaning but not their emotional triggers. I'd go a step further to suggest that when Fuentes engages in this hyper-reality speak, he is creating a space for his followers who get it, and thereby have a code for the in-group and a semi-secret language to communicate with. Using language in this obtuse way where deeply incendiary statements have no real meaning for an in-group other than establishing the boundaries of that in-group makes Fuentes into an audience proxy, a sort of living narrative tagline that any individual follower can see themselves in and hang their specific grievances on. As an example, Groypers will refer to themselves as pieces of shit, people of low self-esteem, etc., not as a cry for help, but more as a way to own libs or rebel, and most importantly, to show their adherence to Groyperism. Groyperism is a kind of loosely defined white Christian nationalism or white identitarianism or just straight white supremacy, depending on which Groyper you consult. Even their definition of what is and is not white is hard to pin down, and you should read the comments on a TikTok I made about that here, or I'll put a link below. When Fuentes says some abhorrent thing, it is difficult to know what he means to convey. Does he really think Hitler was a great guy, or is he just triggering the libs, triggering Ben Shapiro, getting clicks? Is he reading an Onion headline? Is he offering a serious policy debate? Is he speaking in code to a knowing clique? As with anything Republicans say these days, who knows? Whatever he's doing, it is difficult to tell when he's being sincere and when he's just baiting the hook. Consider this, we are all told repeatedly that if we don't support Israel murdering children in Gaza, then we are anti-Semitic. Fuentes hears the same accusation about his thoughts on Israel. Rather than engage in a shouting match with people like Katie Miller who bakes straw man pies with gobs of false equivalents, Fuentes just says, oh, okay, then I'm anti-Semitic. You defined me. Nya. He invests, owns, then throws up their bile right back in their faces. Their Groypers love it. It's a malevolent acquiescence to an impossible accuser. He will then maybe praise Hitler and Stalin and Michael Jackson and Mel Gibson before laughing it off and claiming that he's not anti-Semitic at all and really actually loves all humans. This way of communicating echoes the current mainstream Republican machine at large, where daily outrages, chaos, cruelty, incompetence, and very serious matters are all bundled into a spittle-laden ball of anger and fear. In last Saturday's Rumble video, Nick Fuentes slaps Megyn Kelly around for some of her predictably poorly researched work. He calls Ben Shapiro a snake, and then he rightly and righteously takes on the state of Israel and the Palestinian genocide. I couldn't keep my head from shaking back and forth. Was it a fake? What's real? Is he a right-winger? He is. I don't know. He went on to condemn Israel's inordinate influence over American politics. And as much as I agree with him about Megyn Kelly and stopping aid to Israel, I have no idea if he means what he says or not, because he clearly does not mean much of what he says. But he has, unlike the Republican politicians currently protecting PDO files, a moral core that, like mine, does not include murdering children for political gain. Say what you want about Fuentes, he seems to actually truly believe in some of what he says. It's this iridescent spark of humanity that sets Fuentes apart from the Republican elite. On a couple of issues the Republican establishment has abandoned, Fuentes sparkles like a magnificent dung beetle on the steaming pile of shit that is the GOP. Groypers follow Fuentes despite or in the upside-down world of hyper-reality because of the way he couches his disgust of things ordinary people should be disgusted with in abhorrent racist statements. If you're in the in-group and you pick and choose the things you believe Fuentes actually believes, then you can make of Fuentes a hero. Absurd as that sounds. He's like an unserious, vacuous Slobo Zizek. But Zizek is an actual intellectual and a very well-studied philosopher. Fuentes is none of that. He washed out of college, Kirk-like a soon-to-be ICE agent washes out of the police department before applying at DHS. I say that while still holding the firm conviction that college is by no means a necessary prerequisite for being an intellectual. As limited as it is, Fuentes knows his audience, the teens and young self-described white men who feel condemned and abandoned by affirmative action, DEI, woke America. They feel condemned out of the gate, and Fuentes steps in as their, "You don't like me? Then fuck you" mouthpiece. He acknowledges their frustration with liberal wokeism and the lying media, and he offers solutions to their problems, recruits them to a cause greater than themselves, America First. His movement, as predictably as amorphous as Make America Great Again, just more bumper sticker pablum, but it works. It's all horseshit, of course, but he's good at horseshit. He's good at, if you know, you know, at this new hyper-reality of hatred and racism and misogyny that he claims is not hatred and racism and misogyny. You know it's horseshit. I know it's horseshit, but the teen boys, physically or mentally, who follow him hear more than that. They hear a call to arms. And look, I'm sorry, but there is a lot of lame absolutism that comes from the left. God forbid you say something slightly to the right of accepted dogma a week after leaving your Trump community, your Trump family, for a college dorm room somewhere on the coast. I say this as a dude who came out of a lefty household, but first signed up as a Republican because, and I quote my 18-year-old self, Democrats are pussies. Yeah, I get why these guys follow Fuentes, especially the young men who were raised in tough man MAGA households, in Fox News, and Donald Trump's pea-grabbing America. They hear Dem Society telling them minority applicants get preference at the same time it tells them to meditate away their ever-present boners. Where are these dudes supposed to go? In a barrage of hyper-reality overstatements and politically incorrect mud-slinging, Fuentes gins up frustration and anger in the brains of 15-year-old white boys and men who've been told by MAGA culture that because of their skin color, they will always be last in line, forever hated and always the predator. No wonder they want, as one Groyper commented, just a country of their own. And Fuentes is right there to provide it. He engages in textbook hucksterism, of course, and he's kind of good at it. The Groypers genuinely believe that they have joined a cause greater than themselves. They say terrible things at Fuentes' guidance, which further isolates them from society while at the same time making them ever more susceptible to Fuentes' influence. We call them ugly and obnoxious, and they respond predictably with, "Okay, I'm ugly and obnoxious." It reminds me of my high school days when they segregated about 12 of us white boys into a classroom during a Filipinos versus Howley war. And so we, the Howleys, the white boys, were like, "No, okay, fuck you." And we started drawing swastikas on the chalkboards. That's the kind of shit boys will do. It's not like any of us wanted to gas Jews or even knew what a Jewish person was. I mean, we were ignorant as shit out there in the sticks. Honestly, I didn't really have a clue what a swastika was, where Germany was, or Europe for that matter. I mean, I got a combined 805 on my SATs, people. Combined. We weren't dumb, just ignorant. But our response to segregation was predictable if you understand human behavior. And Fuentes' followers feel segregated from society. Fuentes is quick to second those feelings and then ask for donations. I'm surprised he hasn't offered a meme coin. The lesson is, if you don't give boys space and time to learn and grow, and importantly fuck up early in life, at least politically, then when they inevitably do fuck up and are exiled, they'll find each other and we're all gonna get groypered. And I do segregate Trump voters and am willing to forgive those whose brains aren't yet fully developed. With Fuentes, in the end, I can't tell what's honest, what's click-seeking, or even really what he wants beyond attention, money, and to steer the conservative ship. The thing is, he's been at the tiller all along, or at least his racism and misogyny have been. He's more of a threat to the Republican establishment than he is to the country because he's an honest right-winger. He's saying the Republican truth out loud. White people should rule, Jews are snakes, and women are dumb and dangerous. That's like 1,000 years of white authoritarian governance right there, and the GOP writ large. But it's not a popular take amongst the vast majority of today's Americans. If anything, as Avis Inspirations commented on my TikTok, by platforming naked conservative thinking, he's fast-tracking the matriarchy. Establishment Republicans know that without Trump at the helm, racism and misogyny is a losing ticket, and they are quaking in their shiny think tank loafers at the march of the Groypers. It will be interesting watching the coming RNC v. Groyper smackdown as Groypers bring their specific problems with the media, Israel, and foreign wars to the diffuse mainstream Republican message of victim blaming and anger. Fuentes is the right-wing stripped of all nicety. He's the distillate. He is them, and they are self-hating. He could be their next grifter king, their next bankrupt felon reality star, if he learned to couch his hatred in more subtle resentments. Like Trump, he's really nothing more than a two-bit shock jock who figured out how to get some attention. A lot of attention. He represents the natural regression of right-wing political entertainment as it slides ever down into the pus-filled chamber pot of hatred. For the Groypers themselves, more than any policy or idea, even more than the fun of saying horrid things to get clicks or whatever they're doing with their hyper-reality, even more than all of that, what I think the Groypers are attracted to, what draws them away from the Republican establishment, is Fuentes' honest moments, especially when that honesty is counter to Republican policy. We get so little honesty from our media, from our daily interactions at work or in a store or on the phone, that it feels like we live in a Kafka cartoon. Our corporate corpse of a culture is a real soul crusher. We are starved for anything real, honest, or direct in our public lives. So much so, Groypers welcome the opposite as a kind of poultice, a para-reality where the truth is told in a lie that's true that's a lie or something. Even after saying that, I find it hard to say definitively that I would not have been sucked into Fuentes' world if I had grown up in the Trump era, especially if I'd had MAGA parents. That's in spite of, or maybe because, it is difficult to ferret out what Fuentes actually believes. I get the sense that he doesn't really believe the abhorrent racist stuff he says, that he is deliberately communicating with and in the hyper-reality digisphere. I mean, he says he's a white nationalist in one breath and then gets caught on a police body cam saying he's a Mexican and referring to his last name to back that up. He is, finally, unalloyed republicanism, stripped of all niceties, uncapped, unmuffled, let loose in the Republican body politic. He is their cancer. He is them. It's not our duty to counter his words as if he is sincere. He's sincerely Republican. Let's let the Republicans do that. I am genuinely curious what you think of the Groypers, especially if you're willing to see them as young human beings trying to make their way in this insanely fucked up environment and culture we're all currently in, thanks to people my age and older. Asta.